The war room of the Confederation stretched across half a kilometer of crystalline floor. Holographic displays floated in the air like glowing jellyfish, each one showing different data streams from across the galaxy. Commander stood at the center of it all, her four eyes scanning the information that refused to make sense. She had been a military strategist for 40 cycles. In that time, she had planned the conquest of 17 species. Every single campaign had gone exactly as predicted. The Confederation's quantum computers could analyze billions of variables in seconds. They knew how species would react before those species knew themselves. Until now. "Show me the station battle again," said to the central AI. The hologram shifted, replaying the engagement that had happened 3 months ago. Blue icons represented Confederation ships. Red icons were the humans. The AI's voice echoed through the chamber, calm and precise. Human fleet detected at 800 hours. Prediction model indicated 97.3% probability of minimal defense at station. Agricultural colony assessed as low strategic value. Primary human forces expected to defend Tau mining operations. Watch the red icons move across the display. Every human ship, every carrier, every destroyer moved toward station. Not a single vessel went to Tau. "They abandoned the mines," she whispered. "The mines that fuel their entire fleet." "Affirmative," the AI responded. Human decision deviated from all projected scenarios. Tau mining complex captured without resistance. However, station defense resulted in 34% Confederation fleet losses. Mission failure. This was the 5th time had watched this battle. The 5th time she had tried to find the logic. There was none. The Confederation had captured the mines, exactly as planned, but the humans had destroyed so many ships that the offensive had to be canceled. They had traded worthless farmland for a strategic victory, and the computers never saw it coming. "Why?" asked the empty room. "Why defend a farming colony?" She pulled up the interrogation files from captured human officers. Most refused to talk. One, a lieutenant named, had finally answered. His words were now burned into memory. "My grandmother was born there. My mother grew up there. Half the food that fed Earth came from those fields. You think we measure value in ore and fuel? Some things matter more than your damn spreadsheets." The Confederation had spent 2 centuries building perfect strategic models. They studied every species before making contact. They knew how prey animals defended their young. They knew how predator species protected territory. They knew how hive minds prioritized the collective. Every species followed patterns, followed instincts, followed logic. Except humans. Turned to face the War Council. 20 of the Confederation's finest military minds waited for her assessment. Some floated in tanks of liquid. Others stood on multiple legs. A few existed only as digital consciousness projected into the room. All of them had the same question in their equivalent of eyes. "How do we defeat the humans?" "I have analyzed all available data," began. "The quantum processors have studied 17 million instances of human conflict throughout their recorded history. We have dissected their biology, mapped their psychology, and modeled their cultural patterns. Our prediction accuracy for human behavior is 94.7%. Council member, a floating brain in a preservation sphere, pulsed with confusion. "That is higher than any species we have encountered. The collective was only 87% predictable. The Empire was 91%. Yet we conquered both within 1 stellar cycle. How are the humans still resisting?" "That is the paradox," replied. She pulled up a new hologram, showing dozens of human military engagements. "We predict their actions with high accuracy, but that final 5.3% of unpredictability occurs at critical moments. Watch this." The display showed a human ship called the Defiant surrounded by 6 Confederation cruisers. The tactical analysis scrolled beside the image. Prediction: human captain will attempt to flee toward the asteroid field. Probability: 89%. Alternative: captain will surrender. Probability: 11%. The Council watched as the human ship did neither. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the largest Confederation vessel and rammed it at full speed. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire. No tactical advantage gained, explained. The captain simply decided that if he was going to die, he would take someone with him. The computers never considered suicide ramming as a viable option because it serves no strategic purpose. She showed another battle, then another. Each one demonstrated the same flaw in their predictions. Humans did things that made no sense. They rescued wounded enemies instead of finishing them off. They protected civilians even when it meant losing military objectives. They retreated from winning positions because of something they called bad feelings about a situation. They are chaotic, council member said, his scales rippling with disgust. How did such a species even develop space travel? That is the question I have been asking, replied. She brought up human history files. They should not have survived their own development. They fought constant wars among themselves. They created weapons that could destroy their entire planet and came within minutes of using them multiple times. They nearly rendered their world uninhabitable through industrial pollution. By all logical models, humanity should have gone extinct before leaving their home system. Yet they survived, observed. How? Luck, suggested another council member. No, pulled up more data. Not luck, something else. Something our models cannot account for, I will show you. She displayed a human historical event called the Apollo 13 mission. The Council watched as a spacecraft carrying 3 humans suffered a catastrophic explosion far from Earth. The vessel was crippled, leaking oxygen, with barely enough power to survive. Survival probability, 0.3%, narrated. Logical decision except death. Unexpected outcome, all 3 humans survived. The hologram showed human engineers working frantically on the ground, improvising solutions with materials never meant for the purpose. It showed the astronauts rigging life support systems using duct tape and plastic bags. It showed impossible orbital calculations done by hand when the computers failed. They survived by ignoring what was possible, continued. They tried solutions that should not have worked. They made decisions that violated optimal procedures, and somehow they succeeded. She showed the council more examples. A human scientist who discovered a vital medical cure by accidentally contaminating an experiment. A pilot who saved a crashing aircraft by doing exactly what training manuals said never to do. A soldier who won a battle by pretending to be much larger force through pure theatrical audacity. Do you see the pattern? Asked. There is no pattern, that is their advantage. The council chamber filled with confused murmurs, chirps, and digital signals. Finally spoke. That makes no sense. Chaos cannot defeat order. Unpredictability cannot overcome perfect strategy. I thought the same, admitted. But consider this. Our quantum computers run simulations until they find the optimal solution. The computers assume all actors will also seek optimal solutions, but humans do not optimize. They satisfice. They improvise. They do what feels right instead of what calculates as correct. She pulled up the most recent engagement. 3 days ago, we intercepted human communications before the Battle of Station. We knew their exact plans. We positioned our fleet to counter every move. We should have achieved complete victory. The hologram showed the battle unfolding. The human commander was Admiral, 30 years of military service, decorated strategist. Our models predicted her decisions with 96% accuracy based on her history. The red icons representing human ships moved across the display in their predicted patterns. Forces moved to intercept, exactly as planned. Then everything changed. At the critical moment, Admiral did this. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, abandoning formation. Ships fired at random vectors. 3 vessels simply stopped moving. One accelerated straight up, perpendicular to the battlefield. It made no sense. It was tactical suicide. Our computers could not respond, explained. The targeting systems tried to calculate what the humans were doing. Every action seemed random. While our fleet hesitated for 4.7 seconds, the humans reformed in a new position and struck our command ship. We lost. She paused, letting the weight of it sink in. Later, we recovered Admiral's combat logs. Do you know what she wrote? Sometimes you just have to see what happens. The council sat in stunned silence. Finally spoke. This is illogical. If chaos defeats order, then order itself is meaningless. No, said quietly. It means our order is incomplete. We calculate based on optimal choices. But humans include suboptimal choices in their decision trees. They factor in emotion, intuition, spite, hope, stubbornness, and dozens of other variables we have dismissed as strategic noise. She looked at each council member in turn. We are planning our next offensive. We have calculated the perfect strategy. We know what the humans will likely do. But that 5% uncertainty will manifest at the worst possible moment, and we will lose again, unless we change something fundamental about how we wage war. Leaned forward, what do you suggest? Brought up a new hologram showing human cultural data. Art, music, literature, philosophy, the chaotic mess of human civilization. We need to understand them, not calculate them. Our quantum computers cannot model irrationality because they are built on pure logic. We need something different. You want us to think like humans, pulsed with what might have been alarm, to embrace chaos. I want us to acknowledge that perfect prediction is impossible against an opponent who refuses to be predicted, replied. The humans have a saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy. They build their entire military doctrine around that assumption. They train their officers to adapt, improvise, and disobey orders if the situation demands it. We train ours to follow optimal strategies without deviation. She closed the holograms, leaving only the tactical display of Confederation and human territories. The border between them was a jagged line of contested systems. The War Council requested my strategic assessment. Here it is. We cannot defeat humanity through calculation alone. We must either find a way to limit their unpredictability, or we must learn to be unpredictable ourselves. The chamber fell silent as the council absorbed this impossible conclusion. They were the masters of the galaxy, the perfect strategists. And now their greatest weapon, their perfect mathematical understanding of warfare, had become their weakness. Somewhere on distant Earth, Admiral was probably planning humanity's next move. And whatever she decided, it would almost certainly be something the computers never saw coming. Admiral stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense station, staring at the tactical display. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she kept sipping it anyway out of habit. Around her, junior officers monitored incoming data from scout ships positioned along the Confederation border. They are moving again, Lieutenant Park said from his station. Confederation fleet detected in the Sigma Draconis system. Looks like battle group strength, maybe 200 vessels. Studied the hologram. The blue dots representing enemy ships moved in perfect formation, each vessel positioned with mathematical precision. It was beautiful, really, like watching a choreographed dance. Projections, she asked. Commander Williams pulled up the analysis. Based on their current trajectory and typical Confederation strategy, they are heading for Mars. Our shipyards are the obvious target. If they take out our construction facilities, we cannot replace lost vessels. It is a smart move. Too smart, muttered. Williams raised an eyebrow. Sir. When have the Confederation ever done anything that was not smart? Asked. Every engagement, every battle, they do exactly what the tactical manuals say they should do. Perfect formations, optimal firing solutions, textbook maneuvers. Which is why we keep surprising them, Park said with a slight grin. We do the opposite of textbook. Smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. She had been fighting the Confederation for 3 years now. In that time, she had learned something terrifying. Perfection was predictable. The enemy's greatest strength was also their weakness, but that weakness was getting smaller. Show me the last 5 Confederation engagements, she said. Williams brought up the data, studied each battle carefully. The Confederation was learning. Slowly, painfully, but learning nonetheless. Their formations were not quite as rigid. Their responses included more contingencies. They were trying to factor in human unpredictability. They are adapting, said quietly. Eventually, they will figure out how to counter our chaos, and when that happens, we lose. They have more ships, more resources, more territory. Our only advantage is that we keep doing things they do not expect. So we keep doing unexpected things, Williams suggested. It is not that simple. Pulled up a map of human-controlled space. It was tiny compared to Confederation territory. Every time we do something unpredictable, we teach them a new lesson. Every surprise becomes data for their computers to analyze. We are running out of surprises. The command center fell quiet. Everyone knew she was right. Humanity had won battles through luck, audacity, and sheer stubbornness, but luck ran out eventually. His tactical tablet chimed. She looked down at the message and felt ice settle in her stomach. New intelligence from station. Confederation is moving 3 separate fleet groups toward our territory. One toward Mars, one toward the Europa colonies, and one toward the Outer Rim stations. Williams whistled low. 3-pronged attack, classic strategy, force us to split our fleet. Which means they expect us to split our fleet, said. They are counting on us doing the smart thing. But if we split up, each group is too weak to fight their forces alone. If we concentrate our fleet, they take 2 of the 3 objectives uncontested. Park leaned back in his chair. Damned if we do, damned if we do not. Stared at the display for a long moment. The Confederation had finally done it. They had created a no-win scenario. Every logical option led to defeat. The computers had accounted for every reasonable response. Unless she did something unreasonable. Pull up Earth Defense Committee contact, said. I need to talk to someone. 10 minutes later, she was in a secure video conference with General Martinez, the head of Earth's military. His weathered face filled the screen, and he did not look happy. Admiral, I just saw the Confederation fleet movements, Martinez said. This is bad. We need to make a decision quickly. How do you want to split our forces? I do not, replied. Martinez frowned. Then which target do we defend? We cannot let them take Mars. Those shipyards are critical. We are not defending any of them. The silence stretched. Finally, Martinez spoke, his voice carefully controlled. Explain. They expect us to defend, said. Every tactical analysis points to Mars as our priority. They have positioned their fleet to cut us off from Earth while their secondary forces destroy our construction facilities and colonies. It is perfect strategy. So what are you suggesting? Took a deep breath. This was the moment, the decision that would either save humanity or doom it. We let them have Mars, we let them have Europa, we let them have the Rim stations. That is insane, Martinez stood up, face flushing. Without Mars, we lose our primary construction capacity. Without Europa, we lose food production. Without the Rim stations, we lose our early warning network. We lose nothing they cannot rebuild, interrupted. Meanwhile, we do something their computers will never predict. We attack there. The screen flickered as Martinez sat back down slowly. Say that again. We take the entire fleet and strike at the heart of the Confederation, their capital world, the place they have never bothered to defend because no one has ever been stupid enough to attack it. Martinez stared at her. That is not just stupid, Admiral. That is suicide. We would have to traverse 3 Confederation-controlled systems. We would be bypassing strategic targets, ignoring supply lines, and leaving our entire territory vulnerable. Every military doctrine ever written says it cannot work. I am counting on that, replied. Their computers think like we think or like we are supposed to think, but we are human. We do not have to make sense. Walk me through it, Martinez said. Pulled up a star map. The Confederation is committing 70% of their available forces to this 3-pronged attack. That leaves their core systems lightly defended. They have never needed heavy defenses because they have never been threatened. There has token security at best. She traced a route with her finger. We take the fleet through the 128th system, which they consider secure. We transit fast, minimal stops. We bypass the outpost because attacking it serves no strategic purpose and would alert them to our presence. We emerge in their home system before they realize we have moved. And then what? Martinez asked. Even if you get there, you will be facing whatever defenses they have plus response fleets once they realize what is happening. You will be deep in enemy territory with no support and no retreat. Yes, agreed. It is a terrible plan by every measure of strategic thinking, which is exactly why it might work. Martinez rubbed his face. You are asking me to approve a plan that sacrifices our most valuable assets and sends our entire fleet on a one-way mission into the heart of enemy space. I am asking you to trust that humans do not win through good planning, said. We win through sheer audacity, through doing things that should not work but somehow do. That is who we are. For a long moment, Martinez just looked at her. Then slowly he nodded. You know what the worst part is? I actually believe you might be right. When do you want to launch? Immediately. Every hour we wait gives their computers more time to calculate what we might do. All right, Admiral, I will inform the committee. They are going to hate this, but I will get you authorization. He paused. I do not have to tell you what is riding on this. If you fail, Earth will be defenseless. If I fail, we were going to lose anyway, replied. At least this way we go down swinging. The conference ended, turned back to her crew. Start prepping the fleet. We launch in 6 hours. Plot a course for the 128th system, and I want complete communication silence once we enter Confederation space. Sir, Williams said hesitantly, are you sure about this? Not even a little bit, admitted. But I stopped being sure about things the day humanity first encountered the Confederation. Now I just trust my gut, and my gut says we are going to do something incredibly stupid. Park grinned. That is the most human battle plan I have ever heard. Watched as her crew began preparations. Around her, orders were given, systems were checked, and humanity's entire fleet began to mobilize for a mission that all logic. She thought about the Confederation commanders, sitting in their perfect war rooms with their perfect computers, confident in their mathematical superiority. They would never see this coming. They could not, because no quantum computer in the universe would ever predict that humanity's response to a no-win scenario was to ignore the game entirely and punch the opponent in the face. 6 hours later, Earth's fleet departed. 237 vessels, every ship humanity could field, began their journey into the dark. They moved in complete silence, every communication system shut down, every energy signature minimized. They were a ghost fleet, carrying the hopes of an entire species into the unknown. Commander detected the fleet movement 7 hours after it began. By then, the humans were already past the point of interception. She stared at the holographic display, trying to understand what she was seeing. This makes no sense, she said to the AI. Show me their trajectory. The AI traced the human fleet's path. It went nowhere. It bypassed strategic targets, ignored supply depots, and headed straight through Confederation space toward nothing of military value. Where are they going? Asked. The AI was silent for a moment, processing. Then it spoke. and for the first time heard something in its voice she had never heard before: uncertainty. Unknown. Current trajectory does not match any predicted scenario, attempting to extrapolate destination. Watched the red icons move across the map. A cold feeling settled into her core. The humans had done it again. They had made a choice that the computers could not understand. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a terrible thought emerged. What if they are coming here? The human fleet emerged from jump space 3,000 kilometers from the Confederation. Alarms immediately began wailing across the planet's defense network. Orbital stations scrambled to respond. Patrol ships that had been on routine duty suddenly found themselves facing an invasion force. Admiral stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching the chaos unfold on her tactical display. The Confederation hung before them like a blue-green jewel, beautiful and vulnerable. "Status report," she ordered. "Enemy defense fleet is scrambling," Williams reported. "Looks like 40 vessels in immediate response range. Another 100 moving to intercept from various orbital positions. They were not expecting this." "No one expects this," Park said, "because it is insane." Allowed herself a small smile. "Launch all fighters, all ships engage at will, target military installations only. We are not here to kill civilians." The fleet surged forward. Human ships, battered from years of war, threw themselves at the surprised defenders with wild abandon. It was not elegant, it was not efficient, but it was aggressive, chaotic, and completely unexpected. The Confederation Defense Forces tried to respond with their usual precision. Ships moved into optimal formation. Firing solutions were calculated. Countermaneuvers were plotted. But they were fighting from a defensive posture in a scenario their training had never prepared them for. No one had ever attacked the before. Watched a Confederation cruiser move to intercept 3 human destroyers. The enemy vessel positioned itself perfectly to maximize firing angles while minimizing exposure. It was textbook defensive tactics. So Captain, commanding one of the destroyers, rammed his ship into an asteroid and rode the debris field toward the cruiser like a surfer riding a wave. The Confederation ship's targeting systems tried to lock onto's vessel through the chaos of spinning rocks and ice. By the time they acquired target lock, was already on top of them, firing at point-blank range. "Confederation cruiser disabled," Park reported with barely concealed glee. "Reports minimal damage to his ship. He says, and I quote, 'That was awesome.'" "Tell him to stop showboating and get back in formation," ordered, though she could not quite suppress her grin. But the smile faded as more Confederation ships arrived. The initial surprise was wearing off. Enemy vessels were adapting, adjusting their tactics. The quantum computers in their war rooms were processing this new scenario, learning from every engagement. "Sir, we have a problem," Williams said. "Long-range sensors show major fleet movements from the system. They are recalling forces from their offensive against Earth. ETA 40 minutes. 40 minutes. That was all the time they had. Once the main Confederation fleet arrived, humanity would be outnumbered 5-1 in the middle of enemy space. It would be a slaughter." "Open a channel," said. "All frequencies. I want everyone in this system to hear me." "Channel open, sir." Took a breath. "This is Admiral of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I am broadcasting to all Confederation military and civilian networks. We have penetrated your home system. Your defenses are falling. In 38 minutes, your reinforcements will arrive and you will probably destroy us. But before that happens, I want you to understand something." She paused, looking at the planet below. "We did not come here to annihilate you. We came to prove a point. You tried to defeat us with mathematics. You sent your perfect fleets with your perfect strategies against us. You calculated our responses with 95% accuracy, and you lost, every time." On the planet below, listened to the transmission from the emergency command center. Around her, Council members shouted orders, demanded action, called for countermeasures. But she remained silent, listening to the human's words. "Do you know why you lost?" continued. "Because we are not variables in an equation. We are not predictable because we are not trying to be optimal. We are trying to be human. And that means sometimes we do things that make no sense. We defend worthless colonies because our grandmothers were born there. We ram ships into asteroids because it seems cool. We attack you instead of defending our own because sometimes the best response to a perfect plan is to flip the board over and do something crazy." Looked around her bridge at her exhausted, battered crew. "You calculated that we would split our fleet or concentrate our defenses. You never calculated that we would just leave everything behind and come punch you in the face. Because that is not logical. That is not optimal. That is just human." 26 ships destroyed or disabled, Williams reported quietly. 41% of enemy defensive fleet neutralized. "New contact," Park added. "Confederation reinforcement fleet entering the system. Multiple battle groups. This is going to get rough." Nodded, the endgame was approaching. "Continue broadcast. I want them to hear all of this." She turned back to the microphone. "Your computers will eventually figure out how to factor in human unpredictability. You will learn from each engagement until you can predict even our chaos. You are already adapting. I can see it in how your ships are fighting now compared to 30 minutes ago. Eventually, you will win, because you have more ships, more resources, more everything." "Admiral," Williams said urgently, "the main fleet is moving to engagement range. We need to withdraw now if we are going to withdraw at all." "Not yet," said, then to the Confederation. "But here is what I need you to understand. Even if you defeat us, even if you conquer Earth and every human colony, you will never truly win, because we will keep surprising you. Every single human will keep doing illogical, inefficient, stupidly brave things. We will save enemies who should die. We will fight battles we cannot win. We will make choices that make no sense. Not because it is strategic, but because it is who we are." The first ships of the Confederation main fleet began firing. Human vessels maneuvered to respond. The battle was entering its final phase. "Your quantum computers can calculate everything except the one thing that matters," said. "You can model our tactics, our biology, our technology, but you cannot model hope. You cannot calculate stubbornness. You cannot predict the irrational determination of people who refuse to accept that they should lose." She thought about Earth, undefended and vulnerable. She thought about Mars, probably under attack right now. She thought about all the things she was risking on this mad gambit. And she thought about singing happy birthday to his pilot in the middle of enemy territory because some things mattered more than communication protocols. "So here is my offer," said. "Stop trying to conquer us. Stop treating us like a problem to be solved with the right equation. We do not want to destroy you. We just want you to leave us alone. Let us both walk away from this war and maybe, possibly, try to understand each other instead of fight." "Admiral, we are out of time," Williams said. "Half the reinforcement fleet is in firing range. If we do not leave now—" "I know," said. Then, surprised by her own words, she added, "Send the withdrawal signal. All ships retreat to jump coordinates. We are going home." "Sir," Park turned to stare at her. "We can still do more damage, we can." "We can die heroically and accomplish nothing," interrupted. "We made our point. We proved humans cannot be defeated through calculation alone. We showed them we are willing to do the impossible. That is enough." She looked at the planet one more time. "Besides, I just did the most unpredictable thing possible. I gave them a choice instead of a fight. Let us see what they do with it." The human fleet began to withdraw, moving back toward the jump point. Confederation ships pursued, but cautiously. The computers were uncertain. The humans had penetrated to the fought for less than an hour and were now leaving. It made no sense. Was it a trick? A distraction? What were they planning? The answer, of course, was nothing. They were not planning anything. They were just going home. On the planet below, watched the human fleet prepare to jump. She had the power to order pursuit, to chase them down, to finally destroy the humans who had all prediction. But's words echoed in her mind. Humans cannot be defeated through calculation alone. Hold fire, said quietly. Commander stared at her. They are escaping. We have them outnumbered. We can. We can learn, interrupted. For 3 years, we have tried to calculate how to defeat them. Perhaps it is time to calculate whether we should defeat them. The council erupted in protest, but ignored them. She opened a return transmission to the human fleet. Admiral, she said, your fleet is free to depart. I am calling for an immediate ceasefire across all fronts. The Confederation Council will convene to discuss your proposal. On the Indomitable, eyes widened. Did they just? They did, Williams confirmed. Confederation forces are standing down. We have free passage to the jump point. Sat down heavily in her command chair. She had prepared for death. She had prepared for a heroic last stand. She had not prepared for this. Well, she said finally, that was unexpected. Park laughed, slightly hysterical. We came here to prove humans are unpredictable, and we ended up making the Confederation unpredictable instead. The fleet jumped, leaving behind a confused enemy and the possibility of something impossible: peace. Months later, a Confederation doctoral student named or would publish a thesis that changed everything. The paper's conclusion was simple but revolutionary. Humans cannot be defeated through calculation, because their greatest strategic advantage is their willingness to defy calculation itself. They do not optimize for victory. They optimize for meaning, for emotion, for values that exist outside strategic considerations. This makes them simultaneously the most vulnerable and most unbeatable species in known space. The paper became required reading at Confederation military academies. It included an appendix of human decisions that had prediction. A pilot who saved his wingman instead of completing his mission, losing the battle but gaining a lifelong friend. A colony that shared medicine with Confederation wounded instead of letting them die, turning enemies into advocates for peace. An admiral who invaded the not to conquer it, but to make a point. But the most cited passage came from the conclusion. The Confederation's greatest weakness is not our inability to predict human behavior. It is our assumption that everything should be predictable. We have built our entire civilization on the principle that the universe follows logical rules. Humans have built theirs on the principle that rules are meant to be broken. Perhaps there is something to learn from that. The peace talks lasted for 2 years. They were frustrating, chaotic, and frequently made no sense to the Confederation negotiators. The humans kept bringing up irrelevant topics like art and food. They insisted on including cultural exchange programs in the treaty. They demanded that Confederation students come to human universities and vice versa. Why does this matter? Asked during one session. These are not strategic considerations. Exactly, replied. We do not want a strategic peace. We want a real one. That means you need to understand why we do the things we do, and we need to understand why you do not. Eventually, a treaty was signed. The Confederation from human space. Embassies were established. Student exchange programs began. Cultural exhibitions were organized. It was messy and complicated, and nothing like the clean, efficient agreements the Confederation usually negotiated. Admiral retired the following year. She gave one final speech at Earth Defense Command. For 3 years we fought a war we should have lost, she told the assembled officers. We won because we refused to accept that logic was the only way to fight. We surprised them. We confused them. We made them question everything they thought they knew about warfare. But in the end, we taught them something more important than any military lesson. She looked at the faces of the new generation of officers. We taught them that being unpredictable is not about chaos. It is about being authentic. We did not win because we were random. We won because we were genuinely, authentically human. We made choices based on love, hope, stubbornness, and occasionally sheer spite. And that is not something any computer can ever truly understand or counter. Years passed. The former enemies became trading partners, then reluctant friends. Confederation quantum computers processed terabytes of human cultural data, trying to understand the species that had all prediction. They analyzed art, music, literature, history, philosophy. The patterns remained elusive. In a Confederation university, a young student asked her professor why humans were so hard to understand. The professor, a veteran of the war, thought for a moment. Because understanding requires accepting that some things cannot be calculated. Humans taught us that the universe is bigger than our equations, more chaotic, more beautiful, and infinitely more interesting than we ever imagined. But how do you deal with something you cannot predict? The student asked. The professor smiled, a gesture learned from humans. You stop trying to control it. You start trying to appreciate it. That is what makes it beautiful. On Earth, in a small apartment in Beijing, Admiral received a package from Confederation space. Inside was a handwritten letter from Commander. You were right, the letter said. We could never defeat you through calculation. But by trying, we learned something far more valuable. We learned that the greatest danger in seeking perfect understanding is losing the ability to be surprised. Thank you for reminding us that the universe does not have to make sense to be worth exploring. Smiled End.